Welcome to the Creative Endeavor Podcast. This is the podcast bringing you inspiring stories from creative professionals from around the world. It's real conversations with real artists. And welcome to the exclusive video version of the podcast. I know it's another late night. I really need to get some lighting sorted during the day. You can see me a little bit better. I'm more grainy and dark and mysterious again. I'm hiding. Anyway, I tend to get a lot of good work done up here in the evenings because things are nice and quiet and I don't have any of these audio issues coming through the microphone like insects, birds, chainsaws, lawnmowers, all that good stuff. Anyway, you're here. That's the main thing. I'm here and we're going to get inspired together. I'm so excited to share this conversation with you. I'm talking to TJ Cunningham, who's an amazing artist based in the United States, originally from Vermont. TJ produces some incredible landscape paintings, as well as some interesting portraiture, but not of people, of sheep and other things like birds. He's got a really cool painterly style. So right now, go and follow TJ. He can be found on his website, cunninghamfineart.com. I'll put that on the screen right there. And you can also find him on Instagram at Cunningham Fine Art. Now, as is the case with many of the guests on the Creative Endeavor, I've been following TJ for quite some time, and I'm really inspired. And there's even been a few of those little posts that I see that come up on Instagram that I just hit save. You know what I'm saying? You do the same thing, right? You just hit save and you go back and you get inspired again later. You go back in that folder. It's pretty cool. I got a file on the guy. What I love about TJ's work, and there was a really interesting little insight that he shared with his followers over on Instagram. It's how he goes about putting together his images. He's got a really interesting way of applying the paint. He gets really experimental, which is incredible. The thickness and the texture in some of his images is quite beautiful. When you stand back, and especially when they're reduced on that little screen, granted, I've only ever seen them on a screen, they look incredibly realistic. So there's something really cool here. So always cool to reach out to another artist that I've been following and geek out about the art side of things. But as is the case with many of the episodes, everybody's got just a super interesting story. Have you found that? For every artist, there's another unique, interesting path of how they got to where they are. And I wanted to hear TJ's journey. I mean, how he started, what it was like, studying art, coming up in the industry, and, representation and hearing him reflect on galleries, but also how he's finding his feet with the new world and situations that we're all faced with. How does he bob, weave, move, and adapt and roll with the changing times? This was a great conversation. I got a ton out of it. So again, right now, go and follow TJ. His work can be found on his website, cunninghamfineart.com, and on Instagram at Cunningham Fine Art. Without further ado, here's TJ Cunningham in the Creative Endeavor. Well, TJ, welcome to the Creative Endeavor Podcast. Such a pleasure to finally meet you. I've been following you for a while on the socials. I'm blown away by your work. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here, Andrew. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, look, I really do like to kick things off this way because here on the podcast, it's not just about the art and the painting. It's about the artist as well. And I find artists' stories and their origins so interesting as to how you got into this thing. Because let's face it, being an artist is kind of weird. I mean, there's a few of us, even though, I mean, we're all connected on social media, and you get artists with like hundreds of thousands of followers and all sorts. But it's kind of a rare job, isn't it? So how did you first start this? Where did the journey start for you? What was it like growing up? Just fill us in on the backstory to TJ Cunningham.
Well, so it's kind of it's one of those stories that can be told two different ways, right? So the one side of it is my grandfather was a painter and my great grandmother was a painter, and then back to actually connections with John Singer Sargent. And there were a couple of, I didn't see them; they got auctioned off um, before I even would have known what I was looking at. But there were a couple of Sargent drawings in my grandmother's house, and just sort of like, so there was this art thing, right? And so that, I think, made it acceptable. Like there was never any like, my grandfather was a painter, maybe I'll be a painter, kind of thing. But then the other side of that was just, a very natural, I love to create. And I'm one of those, I've gotten better, but I could not read as a child. Like I just couldn't read. I mean, if I could physically do it, but I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I looked at all the pictures. If ever I wanted to explore something, it was doing something with my hands, creating something. So that led into some sculptures, and I was a dishwasher at a diner when I was 17. And I had this Tyrannosaurus Rex sculpture, and I was making like $5 an hour or something. And I sold it for $100, put it next to the cash register, and it sold in this little country diner. And I thought, well, you know, I guess being an artist won't be that difficult. I'll go study art in college. And so that's kind of those are the two channels that led to, I'm going to go study art. And it was a commercial art degree, Bachelor of Science. It wasn't an art school. But I got into oil painting. It was just one of those, like, I'll always remember it. Like I was painting a pear, and it's like, this is it. Like once I touched oil painting, like, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. And it's just been, staying in the game since then. So
Excellent. Oh man, that's amazing. What describe that feeling though, like when you made that sale of that T-Rex next to the cash register. What was that like? Was that must have been a real light bulb moment for you?
oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was just this absolute determination. Like, okay, this happened, so now I'm going to study art. It was like all the sort of, because when you're 17 and you don't know what to do, and I heard every starving artist, like, the first thing, I think maybe I'll study art. I'm like, oh well, you won't make any money until you're dead, like all the stock answers that you get when you say you want to pursue art. So I was apprehensive about it, but then it's just like, it's the first time I've ever tried to sell artwork, and $100 is a lot of money when you're making $5 an hour washing dishes. So I
Yeah,
just
man,
thought,
that's a
hey,
lot of
this is
hours
it.
washing
This
dishes.
is it.
Yeah,
This is it. So,
brilliant.
and I don't think I ever, like, there were some things that I was interested in, history, and like the freshman drawing classes, like were pretty scary. So I had like a backup plan that I would be like a history teacher or something, which wasn't very well thought through, but it was just sort of a plan B. So
Brilliant. So your college background, like when you started studying, was there much of a connection when you were in those early kind of university days? What was it? I mean, here in down under, and I got a weird accent because I'm Texan, but I grew up kind of in Australia and then here in New Zealand for a time, and now I'm back in New Zealand. So university is different, and college is actually high school. That's so they got their terms
gotcha.
down here all mixed up. So when I think of college, I'm like, okay, what college are we talking about here? So when you were studying, this was a tertiary institution that offered art, but then you say there's a science connection there too. So
Right.
how did you find those early university days? Did they set you up for being a professional, or was there more study that you had to do post that before you kind of found your feet in terms of the art business side of things?
Well, it was a 4-year degree, and bachelor of science, meaning I had to take like English lit, math classes, and science classes, and all sorts of electives. And art was sort of, it was I majored in commercial art, but it wasn't like I was like in a studio painting all day. There were tons of other things to do, and so it was a little bit more well-rounded. Maybe, I mean, I think it was, and so that's what I was doing. It didn't really So it was helpful in that we took design classes and photography classes, and just, a little bit more than just being able to paint after 4 years and graduating. But as far as the art business, like, I had a very, you create a good portfolio in college. In those 4 years, I was 20. I guess I was 21 ish when I graduated, 22, just about to be 22. So created a strong portfolio, get into galleries, paint. And that was sort of the whole business plan. We had one half of a class that was dedicated to the, like, if you sell the painting for this much, the galleries take this much, and you got to put a frame on it, you got to pay taxes, and on down. And so you're left with,
Wow.
$5 or whatever.
One class.
Yeah, well, no, it was one period during one meeting of one class, right? It was just an hour, right? So
that's it. You're set up. Now go to work.
We were not prepared necessarily. I can't think of anything that, because the thing with teachers is they're teachers, and so, like, it's harder to give advice when you haven't been through the ringer. So anyway, but I had the good fortune again, and this is providential, I think, of I went to a figure drawing class the summer before I graduated, and I just said, hey, it was a little gallery. I just said, hey, could I have a show here? And she said yes, and so I the August after I graduated, so the summer that I graduated, I had a show there and put up all my schoolwork, and a lot of it sold. Like half the show sold, and they were pretty, some of them were like $150, and it wasn't like, but again, for me, like, I'd never had a real job at that point. I was just like school, high school jobs and then college jobs. So it was like, okay, all right. And so, a little bit of a false, like, impression of how easy it would be to make it in the art world, but it was enough to get me going.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. I'm looking at your work now, and I do want to spend some time talking about some of these things that really inspire you, because I'm going to drop a name here. Recently, I had on the podcast Stephanie Page Thompson.
Oh yeah.
And her paint application is just out of this world. And I look at your paintings in a very similar way. You can see that kind of that Sargent-ish vibe coming through, that loose application of the brush strokes and stuff, but it's uniquely you. I haven't seen anybody else do it this way. And I do want to take some time to really geek out about art with you, because I must say, I love your choice of subject, which is phenomenal. How do you go? Like, what were some of those subjects that you were choosing straight out of school? Has your style in art evolved since graduating from that college kind of period? Has it kind of come around? Because how do you go from T-Rex to painting a barn and sheep and these beautiful birds and jays on a bough and buttermilk falls I'm looking at here? Just stunning work.
Yeah. The poor T-Rexes went extinct and never came back. They were
very good.
There was so so I went to school, and I'm from Vermont, which is New England. You're from Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, have you ever been to New England in Northeast United States?
Never been.
So it's just this super picturesque. I grew up on a street, or at least a half, like until I was 9, I was on this street where there was a farm right across the road. They would close the road in the morning briefly and herd the cows all down to the pasture so they could, be on pasture all day. And then they would close the road in the evening and bring them back. Right. So that's kind of, in the backdrop of my formation. So I love that, rural anything really, just the rural landscape where human beings are really connected to the land. So that's always been very appealing. And so then going to college, my teachers loved Richard Schmid, right? They just loved Richard Schmid. And, when you don't, I mean, I still love Richard Schmidt, obviously, but when you don't know anything at all, and then all of a sudden it's like these beautiful painterly paintings in a book that tells you how to make them. And he spent a lot of time in New England as well, so there was sort of this connection with subject matter. So hey, I'll paint barns, I'll, these rural scenes, and I started really pushing in that direction. And so, but then there was a transition, and I was a portrait painter, and I did commissioned portrait work and really honed those skills. I was really inspired by Sargent. So I sort of had these, two things going on. And then I had the good fortune of, I studied 3 weeks with an artist who lives in Maine named Stephen Heilman. And he's also just a wonderful landscape painter. And he introduced me to T. Allen Lawson. And Tim's work is just, I look at it all I can. I think his work's amazing. So that's kind of the evolution, those quiet rural landscapes. And the animals come into play really at the beginning of COVID. I had almost completely stopped painting animals, and I just was painting the landscape, and just being in the house and watching the birds, and I just started painting birds and loved it. And then the people who collect my work loved it, so I painted, and just started to explore and realized how much I missed putting the highlight in a living eye, like that wet, glossy glow in an eye. But I don't want to paint portraits at all. I don't really want to paint people at all. And but these birds, and then the sheep were, and the other things, I guess it's mostly sheep right now. I went to a farm and stayed there for 10 days, and they had sheep, and it's just like watching them, especially in the evening, with the sort of glowing sunlight on those, they kind of have ochre color wool against all those cool blue shadows in the grass. It's like, this looks really good, so I'll paint these, and it's just kind of, and then, and again, the people who collect my work really liked it. So it's sort of like that, and then, so it's sort of like a, if I paint something and nobody likes it, I'm like, well, I'll keep that one. I don't like turn it into a series, but if I get a lot of interest in something, then I just continue painting it. So I guess I don't, if I lost the question a little bit there.
No, that's fine. No, I enjoy hearing the backstory there. That's great. But you did just say something there that, so I've struggled with this personally, and I've riffed on this with many artists that have been on the creative endeavor so far, is that, when you get a positive response or feedback from the marketplace, and then you continue to paint the same thing. Joe Paquette and I, we had this back and forth on that about, the external versus the internal, those driving, motivating factors. And there's a certain, raw kind of truth seeking that comes from just doing what you really want to do versus responding to a marketplace and providing a product for them. But I always find it doesn't matter what we do as artists, it's a bit of a dance, isn't it? You've got your foot in the business side of things, trying to make it work as a business and actually derive an income so you can feed your kids, and keep a roof over your head. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, but I'm also an artist, and I feel feels, and I got to get those feels onto the canvas because that's true, man. And it's this impossible position that I think we're in. And it's interesting to hear you say that. So how does that work for you? Do you ever get bored of a particular subject, or are you one of these guys that, and I'm making an assumption here because looking at your work, I assume that you are, because I don't know what it is that comes through your paintings. You feel it, looking at your work, it feels like you're all in. There's nothing here that looks like it's phoned in. It's like this is a raw expression of the way I feel about sheep. But then there's a dozen other sheep paintings, but everyone just shows a little something different. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Yeah. So I'm kind of giving the game away, But
Do it. That's what we're
for
here
me,
for.
it's a Venn diagram where the circles overlap, right? And for me, it's like what I want to paint, what my customers want as far as subject matter, and then what I can paint, right? So like there are things that I don't feel at all qualified to paint yet, right? And some things are in the works, some things have been in the works forever. But I'm not ready,
Mhm.
and most of it is just, it's not that I can't get an image and reproduce the image. It's just like, I just don't know what it feels like, right? Like I can't like sheep. A job even before dishwashing was cleaning up after sheep, right? So I'm very familiar with sheep, right? I paint them until I can smell them, and I'm like, okay, the painting's finished, right? Like you can just tell, this is what a sheep looks like, this is what a sheep smells like. And so there's that. And then, it's a little bit trickier with the what people want, because I don't really I haven't really created too many paintings that, well, I guess I've found enough people so that I'm painting what I want, and there are a lot of people that are interested in that. I guess that's kind of, it's not like, um, I'm trying to think of an example, like, hey, we saw that street scene. Can you paint a bunch of street scenes? Like everybody wants a street scene, and they're like, that's not happening to me, and I think
Yeah.
it's partly because I don't really paint street scenes. And if people were asking me to paint street scenes, I'd be like, maybe, but I got to finish this sheep painting first, right? Like, it's just not like, it's just, I hope that makes sense. It is a tricky thing. But I am painting these things because I really want to paint them. So I guess
Yeah. No,
that's the
it
length
totally
of it.
totally makes sense. But and again, so you're holding on to your artistic integrity there.
Mm.
I've been asked by agents. I'm not going to throw my current agent under the bus, or mention his name, Andreas. But it's like, hey, we need some waves now. We need some mountains now. It's like, dude, I'm doing this right now,
Right, 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 right.
But I also don't want to be ungrateful to the people that are, requesting these things, because, I've got some really wonderful collectors who make my life possible. But I always find it's just this impossible position of trying to balance and wear so many different hats as an artist. You're a technician when it comes to oil painting. You're involved in the material of it. You're also wanting to say something deep about the subject matter. Then you're putting on your business hat. Now you got to go and market this thing. Now you got to go and deal with people, and now you got to worry about this. And now it's time to do the accounts. It's just so many different things that we do as an artist that just ultimately, it's I find it very difficult to transition and go back into that raw creativity. And I find the one thing that just makes it a little bit worse for me, just speaking personally here, is that, or more difficult, I should say. Again, don't want to sound ungrateful, even though I am kind of sounding ungrateful right now. Is continuing to paint these things and requests. I've now just said, commissions are closed. I'm not doing any more. I'm not doing any more commissions. I'm going to do what I want to do for a while. But in looking at your work, the it feels to me, and this is the thing I find so interesting about it and so inspiring about it, is that each one of these paintings appears like an experiment and an exhaustive study of something. Again, whether it's a sheep or a bird, it feels like a disciplined study of the thing and almost a homage to it. And the other thing that I think is quite important for the artist to do, and again, not to kind of blow our trumpet here, but the thing I think it's important to do is take these things that most people overlook and celebrate them. How many people, like how many, I got to just make a mention of the painting that's behind your left shoulder there, of the sheep just on the easel. Yeah. How many, you know, formal portraits of sheep do you see? But it's just stunning. It commands respect. It's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I the uh, the real sheep's name is Cauliflower, and she
Nice.
lives in Vermont. Yeah, but I think I'm going to name the painting Lady Anne because she just looks like she's a Border Leicester, so she's an English breed, and she just looks like royalty to me. And I
That's awesome.
definitely, you can't paint a profile against a dark background without thinking of Sargent a couple times, right? Like it's
Right.
impossible,
Right.
like so I am thinking like that kind of thing. Like it's a portrait. And I think that's the thing. There was a and I was joking with friends, like I really did love figurative work when I graduated. I wanted to paint the portrait. I wanted to paint figurative paintings. I loved all the big name, portrait, but well, really figurative painters. And this is an oversimplification, and I'm not trying to belittle anyone at all here, but I was looking at all the paintings being created, and I was joking with a friend and say it's like it's either Pollyanna or Hugh Hefner, right? She either looks like she's from 1901 and she's wearing this like vintage thing, or it's a naked 19-year-old, right? Like it's just there's no that doesn't feel like there's any middle ground. Like and that was part of the reason why it just didn't feel like there was a place for me. Like I just didn't feel like there was something that I could really get my hands to. And now it's like I'm even deeper in that. Like I'm just not interested anymore. I just I
Yeah.
don't look at
Yeah.
figurative work anymore.
Yeah.
The sheep are my opportunity to like take all of that figurative painter portrait painting desire and just really, you know, unhindered, this is exactly what I want to say about this creature. And there's so many other things that I want to paint. I'm just on sheep right now, but it's like that, you know it's not trying to be anything. It's just how can I take this creature and just portray it with all the excellence I can muster, with the same intensity that I would have if I were commissioned, to paint this really important portrait or something like that. Like I'm all in on every single one of these. And it's really nice to do, and this is the fun about doing a series, is you get to experiment. I was just on YouTube watching. It was about filmmaking and how filmmakers handle color and why color looks so good in movies. You probably know all about this already, but it was 60-30-10 rule. And I sort of intuitively picked up on a little of it, but it's like, okay, here it is all laid out. I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to apply this to the painting I'm working on like right away, like immediately. And I just want to see these colors work. It's like, okay, that does work. Right. And so it's just the subject matter for the oil painter is almost like a vehicle, right? This
Mm.
is just, I'm a realist. I want to keep my drawing skills really, really sharp, and I want to sharpen them. I want to be better at drawing and presenting my subject. But for me, it's a combination between a beautiful presentation of your subject and then a beautiful presentation of your medium. And doing so many, because I'm working from photographs a lot with these sheep. Like I used to paint from landscapes from life a lot more than I do now. I have lots of studies that I can look at, but I do paint from photographs, and that's kind of liberated me to really push away into what I think the colors should be. And I'm tweaking things a lot more because all I have to base them on is the photograph. So I'm kind of riffing on that, and I'm able to explore that. And it's a delight. I'm loving it. So
That's awesome, man. And it's so cool. I got to say again, it's so cool to tell when you can tell by looking at somebody's work that they're all in and they love it. That's awesome. Because I can certainly tell. I've just pulled up another Another, it is so stinking cool, dude. To borrow Thomas Fluharty's phrase here, but it's so cool.
Yeah,
Like your
he's cool
choice
too.
of, he's a good dude. This your choice of color here, on this barn. Now let me get the title of this, and people watching the video or listening to the audio version of this, you go pull up right now cunninghamfineart.com and just have a flick through the gallery here of paintings. You're going to be blown away. Now, I'm looking at right now for Four Flocks Now. Am I getting
Oh
that
yeah,
title right? Yeah, yeah. So the way that sunlight just zings off that red barn, the relationship of that red to its complementary opposite of being the green, the subdued nature of the sky and the hills beyond, it just creates this bam punchy impact. So explain this to me. So you got you 60, 30, 10. I had not heard that before. I've got some understanding of how opposites are used in film and in particular lighting, like most sci-fis that you'll watch, look
hmm
out for the blue and orange relationship or the green red relationship. They'll play these off, or yellow violet relationship. A lot of alien type movies will use almost a greenish teal kind of light with a brilliant orange, like, and you always imagine like there's the monster there, it's glowing, there's this blue like little fine highlight on the skull or the head of this thing, and then you get the red flashing warning light that just illuminates it every now and again. It's that pop of two opposite colors. But how does that
yeah,
work
yeah.
for a 60 30 10 rule? Can you explain that to us in a little bit more depth?
Wow. Okay. Well, the best thing to do would be to share the YouTube video that I just barely watched
Yeah, I know.
with you. But so the idea that 60% of the painting or the set, but the painting for us is one color, and it can be variations of value, but it's all the 60% of it's orange or 60% of it's green. Then 30%, as I understood, would be the complement of that, and then there's a really strong third color in 10%. So it'd be easier.
Wow.
Can I just grab a painting?
Do it.
So
Let's go.
this is the one I'm playing with that. And so I've
Huh.
got orange being the 60%, and I pushed this blue gray, and
Go
this
ahead
is
and
blue.
hold that a little bit closer up to us, so up to that camera. There we go. Now we're centered. Yeah, yep. I really hope
Okay.
folks are watching the video version right now, which is exclusively on my Patreon page. So find that link accompanying this podcast, and you'll get to see this amazing painting. So carry on, TJ.
Yeah, thanks. So orange, blue, the blue is approximately 30%, right? So, and then that pink nose is just that one push of color, and I'm going to push it a little bit more. She's obviously not finished yet, but that's the idea. And so setting up this sort of sweeping design, I always like to be able to turn my paintings, and it's an interesting design no matter which way you
Yeah,
look at it.
you look at it differently as soon as it's inverted or on its side. You look at it as a series of abstract shapes, right?
But
Yeah.
that's the idea with the color. So that
Brilliant.
just meant for me that I'm really grouping the ochre colors together a lot more, and then really simplifying anything that would happen back here or down here into that blue color as the complement, and then I'm going to push that red as hard as I can. Um, and so it's not looking great on a webcam here, but that gives you the idea.
Yeah, it's cool, man. I really no. Thank you for showing us that. That's a beautiful painting too.
Thank you.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So now let's a big thing that I really I love talking about this because what this does is it unlocks some things for people that are listening to this in terms of the business side of art. And what I find is that we've all heard, TJ, you and the listener as well. Like we have all heard those cliches. You're if you do this, you're going to starve to death. Nobody makes it until after they're dead. Yeah, I hope you get used to washing dishes or making coffees, or down under they call it pulling beers. You got that handle, that lever,
Right, right,
all the cliches and things. Or you better go into teaching, because that's the only way you're going to make it as an artist, is to be some bitter and twisted teacher, in some
right,
tertiary
right,
institution.
right.
Um, but here you are doing it, obviously invested in what you're creating, producing beautiful work, and it's working for you as a business. So how did you when did that shift actually occur? Like, after you made that first sale, you're in college, and then you start as a professional. How did that transition happen? And the second part I want to ask you, and we can pick this up as well, is how do you maintain that today? Like, what are some of the tricks that you use to continue to make sure that you stay motivated, you stay creating, you keep producing work in the studio? Like, so how does this work for you? And how did you get started from a business standpoint?
Sure. So the start was the um all the on ramps for me were into the gallery business model. So then you have um an agency repping for you. And so that was how I started. And I probably wasn't very professional at all in the beginning. I remember, I showed up with work like a week and a half late for a show because I missed an email or something like that. And then they were like, well, it's okay, we'll put it up anyway, like that kind of stuff. I mean, so you just kind of learn from mistakes. And um that was the way that I was doing it. And then I was teaching workshops. So galleries, the gallery relationship model, um, just felt like it wasn't succeeding very much. So I thought, I need more galleries, right? If I have a lot of galleries. Um, and then, so I think I made it to 6 or 7 different galleries, and I'm just trying to get enough work out there so that I'm getting something like consistent sales. And things were, they were doing a good job, and some of the galleries that I was working with there at the end were just great. They're wonderful people. I'm still in touch with them. Um, but um, it kind of stopped working for me at the beginning of COVID, and that was really, it was a sort of a knee jerk reaction. I was just afraid that, because all I could think was, all the horror stories I've heard about the great crash of 2008 for galleries, where, you had galleries go under, and they went under with all their artists' work aboard. Like the artists never got their work back. I mean, there's just like an endless string of stories you hear about this kind of thing. So I'm like, I got to at least get most of my work back to me, because all the galleries that I was working with are in cities that were particularly, and I know you've experienced this too, like it's shut down. Nobody's coming in, nobody's going out, and we couldn't see the future. So
No, shut down.
it was a
Yeah.
pretty big reaction. It was a pretty big reaction, and I just pulled out and started selling online. And a lot of things happened, and I gotta say that there's sort of like the overarching uh attitude that I want to have, like, toward everything that I've been able to enjoy, is gratitude, right? Like, I'm not a self-made man. Like, I'm not like, I figured it out, I sat down, I worked hard. Like, you do work hard and you do figure things out, but in the end, like, yeah, I'm just grateful for what I've been able to learn and what I've been able to do. So anyway, I was able to transition to selling online. And it's a crazy thing when you start selling online, and you're not giving galleries a 50% commission anymore. So it's just like, wait, I have 100% more money, literally, and I know and now I know my customer, right? Like, I had no idea, these people were buying my art. I didn't know anything about, other than like a handful, like a dozen people I knew, because of the agencies are so careful to keep the art, because of people like me, right? They keep their artists and their customers separate. And so it just worked. And I just shifted. I shifted out of the galleries like throughout 2020, because at the beginning it was just knee jerk and panic and my goodness gracious, what are we going to do? And then it just was like, this works better. And then I just slowly pulled the rest of my work out, and I've been selling through my website since then. So that's kind of, and the actual, you asked about evolving as a business, like I am still, like I said I didn't like to read as a kid. Like my penance is now I am like getting everything I can get my hands on to try and figure out how to do all this stuff, because it's a totally different skill than drawing value edges and color.
Yeah, it certainly is. Man, I've been on a steep learning curve since about 2016. And, I'm also a slow learner because I lost my business and went broke twice, and where the bottom fell
An
out of
art
this thing.
business?
Oh yeah, no, went completely broke. And so I basically, when I started out, and people who listen to the podcast or kind of know a bit of the background would have heard this story before, but I'll make it brief. But basically, the same global financial crash stuff, all my eggs were in that basket, in that business model that you're describing, of representation. And it's not so much that the galleries kind of went bust. They were going bust all around that area, but the buyers dried up. But in Western Australia, we were insulated from the fallout, the immediate fallout of the crash of '08. It didn't catch up, it would seem, until about 2012. And we were insulated from a strong resource sector. But what actually stopped it was China just made a decision that they would stop buying so much iron ore. And that was the backbone of the Western Australian economy, was iron ore. It was all coming out of the desert in Western Australia. And now suddenly they're like, yeah, we're going to half our order or take it down to a third or whatever. And wholesale executives, employees, boom. It was just, there was money everywhere in Western Australia at that time. You couldn't walk down the street without picking up $150,000 on the side of the road. Now, I say that tongue in cheek, but you had like garbage collection or sanitary experts or whatever working on the mines up there, or people just driving a truck or whatever, making 150 grand a year. And a lot of these people would be like, yeah, I want a cool painting of the Pilbara or the Kimberley hanging in my living room. But those were the first people that got fired. And a lot of these people, good people, were my clients. And they were just gone. Like in one night, I still remember, like it was like less than a 24-hour period. We had a waiting list of people, and it was cut in half. Whereas I was looking at like a full year booked up for work. Now it's like 6 months, and then it starts getting whittled down from there. It was scary, man. It was scary. And I'm
scared listening to it.
Yeah, man. And then you're looking at this going, oh, wow. Because and this was really hard for me to overcome personally, because I was looking at the situation going, well, this is easy. And I did find it easy. I could paint reasonably well. I wasn't as good as I wanted to be. I'm not anywhere near where I want to be now. But at the time, I was producing a quality product. I was getting good money for it. And so in my mid-20s, coming away from a sellout show or commissions or whatever, it just became normal for me. I took it for granted, and I did not prepare for the future. So when the bottom fell out of it, I was left in a position where I think the low point was when I started my YouTube channel and started those initial videos going, what the heck am I going to do now? I was forced to move online. People don't know, but I was living in my studio. My wife and I were living in the studio because we could no longer afford rent. So we were living in a factory unit that essentially had a sink and a shower unit in the back of the factory unit. And we tried to build it out and fix it up, and it was okay. But then from there, just kind of built it up and up and up. And the online model, I've almost become evangelistic about online models now, to a point. I'm concerned about where it's going now. I'm very concerned with it, because I think that just to qualify that, I mean, I think what's happening is slowly but surely they're bringing the digital and the biological together, and they're about ready to merge them. And they've told us that they're going to do that. So that's a point where Tish is out. Tish is hands off. I'm out. So I see that day happening very soon. But I in the meantime, right now, it's the going's good, and I think everybody needs to get online. So that's just my own personal point of view on that one.
Man, that's a crazy story. I had no idea. I had no idea. Wow.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. Because a lot of
dude,
people,
way to persevere though.
well,
I really,
when people saw the first YouTube videos, it was kind of like, oh, this guy's kind of weird, what's his story kind of thing. And then I just started putting up more and more videos, but that nobody really knew that I had a whole backstory of like, I actually had a name in WA. I was producing work and I was, you know, doing great. And then it just finished. And in a little place
yeah.
like Western Australia, I mean, nobody even knows there's a city on the west coast of Australia, down kind of towards the south, called Perth. It's like, I thought Perth was in the UK somewhere or whatever. It's like, no, there's a Perth in Western Australia. It's a very isolated city. There are people in Perth right now listening to this, pulling out their hair, going, "How dare you!" But I mean, come on, admit it. I mean, if you're listening to this and you're from Perth, it's an isolated city. You're in the middle of nowhere. No one's coming for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Perth,
Wow.
man. I miss it. I miss that city, but it's a cool place. Cool place to grow up.
And that's where you restarted though. That's where you like started a YouTube channel and
No, actually,
started
no. So
rebuilding your business.
no. I started my YouTube channel in a factory unit in Daylesford, Victoria, and I was so Victoria was on the opposite side of the country. So I got my start in my career in Perth, then
Mhm.
shipped it across, trying to find home in Australia. We went to Queensland, and then we went to Victoria, so Melbourne is basically the big city in the state of Victoria. Everybody knows where
Mhm.
Melbourne is, and that's south of Sydney. And so I had kind of gotten my start, or I kind of found my feet in the digital world there, but I started with 0 followers, 0 subscribers, just built it from scratch all over again. And that was 2016 when that happened. Yeah.
Dude, well done. Well done. That's a
Uh,
good, it's always a good story to hear, like, when somebody came back, so
they keep
hats off
getting
to you.
up. Yeah, they keep getting up. Look, man. I mean, but this is a thing. I mean, I think our lives are a story, aren't they, in a way? And it's the nature of reality. I'm starting to find is struggle, and there is an element of pain there to it. I mean, I think that the Christian walk as well, like it's the nature of reality is to suffer in a way, but you try to handle it with a sort of gratitude and a grace. It's, as you were saying before, it's your personal philosophy of being grateful. I love that, man. We
Right.
can't forget that, can we?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. And, um, with the always, like, it's kind of, it can all just be taken away,
Yeah, man.
like
Yeah.
you got to hold on to it lightly. Cause it's just, like, I have a, I had a dear friend who I'm older than he was now when he passed, but I remember talking to him, and he had just such, because he was in a business with his dad, and they were doing high end stuff, with electronics, electrical systems, like for I did. I won't say anymore because I'm not quite sure what he was doing, but it was, he was really excited about all of it and what they were doing, and then all of a sudden he's diagnosed with terminal, brain cancer, and
Oh,
and then and he was gone within 2 or 3 years from diagnosis. And it's just like one of those things where it's like, you're full of hopes and dreams, and then you're just clinging to life, and not to be too morbid, but that's one of the things. Obviously you live with that kind of thing because it's reality, and I am grateful. I am incredibly grateful that I get to do this. I mean, and you can take things too far, maybe, like, I do believe in the future. I am excited for the future. I'm not like this may be the last day, but still, like, i'm really
yeah,
i'm really
cool,
grateful, so
cool.
anyway, that point stressed. And yeah, yeah, being an artist. But it's one of those things where it's like, people who are in real estate lose their shirts too.
Everyone
You
loses their
know?
shirts, man.
Yeah,
Everyone loses
like,
their shirts. Yeah, for sure.
yeah. It's like, I mean, I guess, you're in a really stable job, you worked hard, and you got a job in the iron ore business in Western Australia, and you think everything's great for the rest of your life, and then, it's not, so it's one of those things. One of
That's
those
it,
things
man.
you can't really count on it. So
That's it. And if you can come back from calamity like that, it does make you more resilient. But the one thing I told myself is like, okay, never again. That's never going to happen to me again. And then boom, it happens again. I'm like, oh, what didn't I learn? What didn't I get out of this? Um, but now the key, I think, now is just, yes, gratitude number one, first and foremost, being grateful for what you have, and being present in the moment. Because when you're in that position, operating from that point of view, and you're out of that fight or flight, because there's nothing like being broke and hungry and really just sitting on the edge, and to put you in a position where you're not making the best decisions. You're in reaction
I
rather than
know.
thinking ahead. You know what I mean? And a lot of
Yeah.
us artists, artists are there. A lot of us artists are there. But the
Been
thing,
there, been there.
oh man, the thing that gets me though is like, okay, the business model is changing, because the amount of people that are emailing me and messaging me, as a result of, well, not so much the podcast, but more as a result of like social media posts there or YouTube videos. It's like, okay, how do I get into a gallery? Like, that's a question. How do I get into a gallery? I'm like, it's the wrong question. As you were just telling us there. I mean, okay, so you look at something like COVID-19 or whatever gripping the world, and there's this terrible pandemic and yada yada, and but the gallery's just shut down. Retail's gone, and it's going to be affected again. It's not like that it's over now. This is going to continue. So your business model, your future, can't be reliant on systems that have been established over it. The game's changed, new game. Work out the new game. And so the thing I wanted to ask you about here, I mean, I'm looking at your website, got it up on the other screen here. Beautiful website, by the way. TJ, come on, man. This is a beautiful website. So
Oh, thanks.
the design's slick and clean. What is this, Squarespace?
It is Shopify.
Shopify, my man, that's awesome. Okay, look, so with your website now, you know, give us a rundown of this, because you've shifted from that gallery model, and I can see here. I've just got to tell you right now, I'm going to pull up a print. No, I'm not. I'm going to go to paintings. Okay, I'm clicking on paintings, and this is something that I absolutely love. What you've done here is that I can pull up on your website. I can see the price. I've got a massive, dude, I'd like to buy one of these. I'll tell you what.
Hey.
This is really cool. And really great prices, competitive prices too. Not too expensive, but not cheap. It's achievable, affordable work for a painting like this. Come on, a bigger flock. 9 by 12 inches. So you provided your phone number here to contact you if I want to ask you about the work too. Like, you're
Mhm.
available. This is
That's
nice.
right.
There's something here, so I can find out anything I need to find out about the painting. So, how's it been? How's the response been to making this transition? And was this the kind of thing that you had to set up, over the last couple of years? I mean, because you probably didn't have this going like this in 2019, did you?
No, not at all. What I
No.
had going in 2019 was it was it was basically a business card online, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of what, it wasn't a tool set up to sell. And um, it wasn't really an invitation for a relationship either. It was just sort of like, hey, this is who I am. Here's my picture. Here are my paintings. And in my defense, like, the only thing I was thinking was somebody's going to go in, see my work at a gallery, and they're going to look me up on Google to make sure I'm real, and I want them to see, hey, he's a real artist. He's painted other paintings. So everything I did for the first decade of my career was to try and augment my success in galleries. That was really,
Mm-hmm.
really what I was doing. And sort of the, and I still, like, again, like, I don't have any animus toward these. Well, yeah, I gotta be careful here. I'm gonna get my stories mixed up. I am very, very adamant that I never ever want to go back to like I'll go to a coal mine before I go back to a gallery, man. Like, I am completely done with galleries,
Fair enough, man. Yeah.
So, but I was having a conversation with the gallerist, and I'm like, so, like, I sent you the painting, and now I've got this customer that I know that you don't, and they want to buy the painting. Like, is it still a 50-50 split? And she said, if it's in my gallery, it's a 50-50 split. And like, she thought that was like somehow going to convince me to stay in her gallery. I'm like, that was like the breaking point, like the absolute breaking point. It's like, okay, like,
Well,
like there's a rebellion coming. I don't know how it's gonna go, but we gotta do something differently here. And I also have friends that are artists, and and like, they've been in the gallery model all their lives, and I'm like, man, like, I'm gonna be poor forever, like legit poor forever, because you just can't make it, like, you can't make it on 50%, I don't think. I don't, unless you're really selling some crazy expensive work. But
yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
I digress.
Yeah. That is interesting though, TJ. Sorry to cut you off, but that is a real interesting one that a lot of people don't realize. And I don't know of many other business models that operate like that, except for like wholesalers. But wholesalers are dealing with masses of product, whereas you're an artist and you're specializing. You produce one painting, maybe a month or whatever, 24 over a year, and then they're going to say, we're going to take half. Like, I must recognize what the gallery brings to the table, but half of everything I do, I don't get half of everything you do. It's like if we're going to go 50-50, I want half of your time promoting this stuff. How about that?
Right.
I got a bad attitude. Andreas,
Dude,
I hope you're listening.
I'm trying to keep it under control. So
go on.
But then there's like a maybe there's a price point, when you're selling, and I know your work sells for a lot too. So maybe there's a place for an all the time kind of representation when you've got a painting that's 50 grand or something like that. I don't know. But like, the thing that I was doing was, my dad was a machinist and he worked 60 hours a week. And I was trying to turn, because it was all I knew, I was trying to turn the galleries into that. Like, this is how I'll work all the time. I'll keep my employers happy, really. That was how I saw them. And I'll somehow make this work, right? And like, there's going to be some big break, I'm going to win this competition, like these myths that we tell ourselves, that even if it happened, like, now, even if it happened, it's not going to change the game, So anyway, and it just was coming to grips with the fact that it's like, like, I am not, this is not what, like, if I want to be an artist, it's going to have to be different. It's going to have to be different. And really what it is, and it's such a beautiful thing, because I love my customers. Like, I love them, like, I really, like, when I say the people who collect my work, like, I was texting one guy today, like, I really, really care about these people who make this investment in me. And there's something, this ties back into my faith and being a Christian. You're just creating artwork. It's just like, I want to express this and I want to try to get the gallery to sell it, right? And you don't really see where it's going. It doesn't really, there's just like that love of neighbor that isn't really happening in the creative process, right? And for me, a big, huge part of this was like these paintings, I don't want to own them. I mean, I'd like to keep a few, but like, I want this to go to someone else, and I want it to bring them joy, and I want it to be super high quality so that it brings their great grandchildren joy, right? I want this thing to get passed right on down. And that's the thing where it's like, it's
How
just,
cool.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah, like let painting be a way of loving people instead of my vehicle for self-expression. It is that a
Oh,
little bit, but like, can I share this joy? Can I share this passion? And it's like there's somebody standing in the way, and it was the reps. The middlemen were in the way. I didn't know those people, and as soon as they were out of the way, it's like here they all are, here they all are.
wow,
And
man.
so, and the thing that I like, I love to like write birthday cards and do like little drawings and things. Like I wish I could dedicate more time to that because these people are just amazing. And so that's the thing. That's the biggest part of this for me is just, and I'm sure you get this with your students and your online teaching and stuff. It's like you're serving, you're helping, you're loving, you're giving, and I feel like the real success is when you can find a way, because like the people, like, because and also getting rid of all that imposter syndrome, because it's funny because when you sell a $10,000 painting, and the $10,000 paintings I sold, I'd been snookered into a 60-40 split, so I got $4,000 and the gallery got 6, right? Yeah, it was bad. So anyway, right? So it's weird. You can't really process the fact that there's somebody who is eager to trade $10,000 for your painting because you only got 4 and you don't know who they were, right? And so, like, to carve away all those layers of imposter syndrome, where it's like you're not tricking somebody out of their money. They're eager to trade their money for this painting. Like, that's how much joy it brings them, and it's worth that. And so those are the things, like, man, if I have a couple of younger artist friends, and it's just like every chance I get, I'm on this hobby horse, and it's like, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to do. And because
Man.
then you've got lots of people who care about you instead of a few galleries where you're one of their artists that, on a good week, they may think of you. But anyway, I'm rambling. So
Not at all. No, not at all. And in fact, I want you to go back to something just then, because, every one of these podcasts that I'm doing, every single one, there's always a takeaway. And here there's multiple takeaways, but you just said it. And I call that, like, that's the nugget right there. It's a golden nugget right there. And it was, painting for you. Please repeat that if you can remember it. I'm trying to, when I go back and listen to this, I'm going to isolate that quote, and that might even be a little bit of a trailer or a clip for this podcast. But I love that. It was like painting for you is a way of loving people, or something like that. Can you remember
yes,
what you said, please? I heard that. And I was like,
sure.
that's so good. Remember it, Andrew. Remember it. It's like, that was so
Yeah.
good.
To let painting be a way of loving your neighbor. The
Amazing.
the love of neighbor that we are designed to express, right? And it's all
Yeah.
over wherever you see
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah.
That love,
Mm.
like, instead of art being a vehicle
Mm-hmm.
exclusively for self-expression, let it
Mm-hmm.
be a way to love people. And
Amazing.
that like it was sort of like an engine that wouldn't start. And as soon as those connections got made, it's like, okay, this is what it's about. Okay, this is what it's about. And it's so much better.
Think
It's so
about all
much
the,
better than navel gazing.
oh man, think about all the people that never have the opportunity to learn that lesson. You
It
know?
is it's discouraged, though. It's so
Yeah.
discouraged because it's
Why?
like, no, only express yourself. That people are always like, well, don't chase the market. It's like, what is the market? Are those people?
They're people. It's
Like,
people. Yeah.
they're people.
With money.
They're people. Well, yeah, they're people with money,
No, no,
but
no.
they're
I'm
people.
not saying,
They're
they're people with money. I mean, they're people. They have some money to spend. They want to buy a painting, but they are people.
right.
They're, yeah.
They're individuals.
Mm-hmm.
They're just as important as I am, and they're now in my mind and in my heart, and I am so happy because of it. Like, it is just 1,000 times better than what the artist model is. Like, you're so, like, complicated and genius that you need like a team of representatives to like explain you to the world and sell your art, right? You know, like you're Van Gogh. Like Van Gogh, everybody thinks Van Gogh is the only artist that ever lived. Like nobody got along with him. He didn't get along with anybody, and he was this brilliant tortured genius, and you know, his paintings are amazing. So and they weren't worth anything until he died, right? So all this stuff, it's just baloney, you know. And some people are really introverted and they don't enjoy talking to other people. Like everybody's path is different, but I love just being able to make connections, you know. So anyway,
Yeah,
that's the quote.
thank goodness too, man, because I mean, and again, I've said this before, I'll say it again. I learn more from this podcast than anybody. I get more out of it than anybody. It's really is. It should be called the selfish creative endeavor, because, but I just really hope that people hear that and they take that to heart, because, you know, so much of the power and the control has been given to us, and we really do have the reins as artists. But I do want to say I've dropped his name, but I've also, you know, mentioned him a couple of times in episodes, and Andreas really is a dear friend of mine. He's my agent, and he's based now in South Australia. He was the guy that took over the original gallery that I was showing with, in Perth in Western Australia. It was called Applecross. At the time, it was Applecross Framing and Fine Art, and then it became Applecross Fine Art. And so he took it over from dear friends of mine, who were Colin and Gay Dixon. And people might remember Colin from episode 11 or 12 of the podcast. Wonderful man. These are the only individuals I have ever found that would be willing to work with me on my terms. And the relationship was based on trust. And right now the relationship with Andreas is based on trust. I'm hiring an agent, and I would encourage anybody listening to this that if you're going to go into the gallery model, see if you can treat it as a business negotiation. Don't just be, you know, be that piece of the puzzle that will not fit in their model. So they got to build a new model. And the only way you can do that is if you've got a product that they really want to sell, or they really want to get their hands on, or they really believe in you. And fortunately, at the time, I was so blessed to have that opportunity where I met these people and they were like, okay, we are going to make this work. And then we came together and we negotiated, we came up with the deal, and then it worked. But it's like, when you sell this painting, I want to meet the person who buys it, you know, and shake their hand. And it was like, okay, cool. Now I get to see that person. So then you're hiring them for a service. But then this is the thing, dude, if they had told me we're going to do 50-50, I walk. That's it. Like, I can't believe some of the stuff I'm hearing about from, you know, the East Coast of Australia, here in New Zealand, the United States, like 50-50 gallery model. Like, how does that make any sense at all? Like, I mean, right now I'm kind of giving it away a little bit, I know, but I won't work with anybody for more than a third. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. But this really does take negotiating, but we really do have a lot of power and control in that circumstance if you've been able to kind of get out there and do it online for a while, or get out there, build a body of work, improve the quality of your work, you know, because I could see galleries kind of going, all right, TJ, I don't care. Let's talk, man. Let's make this work. If an agent has any sense at all, they're like, I can sell that. So what do we need to do to make this happen? How can I represent you? You know, because that's a product I want to sell. And it's a game. It's a business at the end of the day. I just don't understand. It doesn't make any sense. And I don't understand why more artists don't just kind of play with it. The only reason that the gallery makes any sense for me is just, I just don't have time. So I need to pay somebody for their service to actually go and do that. I wish I had more time. That might change things, but like right now, there's only one person in the world that I would work with on that level. And that's Andres. And, you know, he's my brother in Christ as well. He's a wonderful man. He's a good friend of mine. And he's got his values in check. And, you know, he's just a good, ethical guy, loyal, you know, awesome. And it's kind of rare these days to find that, I suppose. But so I wanted to just throw that in there and qualify that, because when people hear me kind of teasing him a bit behind his back or publicly on the podcast, I'm nipping at his heels to make sure, wait, I'm watching you. But I love him. I love him.
Yeah, and that's why I say it. I don't like. I still have, you know, um, good connections with people that were in the galleries that I worked with,
Mm.
and it's one of those things where, you know, they didn't come up with the model. You know, I don't know where this came from, but they inherited it. And, you know, if you've got 50 artists that are happy to do the 50-50 split, and one guy who's saying, wait a minute, I don't want to do this. I mean, like, what are they going to do? They say, well, you know, we won't sell your paintings then, you know, and that's fine. But I don't like, you know, I don't want anybody to think that I have any bad feelings. It's just how that model works, you know. It's minimum wage or whatever. It just is what it is. So
But I tell you, man,
um
after spending that long on a painting and the gallery saying, no, it's 60-40, by the way, we're the 60. Come on.
yeah, yeah.
Sorry, man. I don't mean to rub
It's
salt
a
in the
pretty
wound there, but it's like, come on.
Yeah, it still hurts. It still hurts. But it's one of those things, once you're free from it, it's like,
Yeah.
wow, you know, the birds
Yeah.
start singing and the sun comes out from behind the clouds. It's like, whoa.
Freedom.
Yeah, exactly. So
Awesome.
um
Awesome.
yeah.
Listen, TJ, it would be an absolute crime to have you on the podcast and not ask you how you do it. All right. So I've seen some posts from you on Instagram, some reels and things. And as I was looking at these, I was going, oh my goodness. There's a materialistic kind of terrible word, I know, but that quality of the material, your manipulation of oil paint as a physical substance. You have found some cool ways of applying paint, brother. It's not just like a palette knife or a paintbrush or something. That you're going beyond. Like I saw a wire brush in there, a squeegee. Tell me a little bit about your approach to handling the material and your experimentation, because clearly that's a huge part of your artistic practice.
Oh, yeah, and thanks for that. I just the there's a little bit of a transition for me. So like starting off, you know, I think almost invariably we paint thinly, right? Like really, you know, washes and you wipe things out and this doesn't look good, so you erase it and that sort of thing. And got to a certain point, probably um it's probably about 2017, and I've been painting for 7 years professionally. I started painting a decade before that, where it's just like um starting to feel a little bit more comfortable with the process. And I did this big waterfall painting, and I did the strokes um, across on the water with a lot of thick paint. There was, you know, track marks that catch a lot of glare and all the mist and shadows of the river behind. I did with really thin paint. This is the first time I remember this, and um, you know, softened it out, and it just had all of a sudden, when it was lit from above, it looked like real water moving in the shadow. You know, and just sort of that feeling of like there's an element here that I can bring to this, where I can try to describe the actual feeling of the thing that I'm painting. And I think a lot of experimenting with the river, like, you know, the first thought, how do you paint transparent water? The first thought is with transparent paint, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, but, you know, if you run into the water, it stops you, right? So maybe my mind needs to see something really thick that's going to, you know, I can't get through it easily, right? You can't run in water quickly. Um, and so all that, you know, just really playing out these ideas led to varied paint application. And it was, you know, long journey to get to squeegees and trowels and all that. But I think that might have even been, uh, I was able to go to a retrospective show of T. Allen Lawson's work, and just see the texture of his paintings and trying to figure out like different ways to put the paint on. And so I had this sculpting, this is back in 2018, I guess. I had this, you know, from one sculpting class, I had all these clay manipulating tools. So I started playing with those. then I was in the hardware store and I picked up that squeegee and I thought, I'll bet like there's something I can do with this. And I've seen some artists do some tricks with it online. So let me go play with that. And then just basically any abstract painting that I can get in person with and see, I'm really studying, because the good ones are all about texture and design. They're not trying to represent anything. And so how do I take those pieces of that beautiful abstract, just like it's a texture that you can feel, and how do I incorporate that into it's not realism but representational art. And so that has led to I came up with this thing, and I don't practice it religiously anymore, but where I'd set a timer on my phone, and every 15 minutes I would switch tools, but I wouldn't switch passages. I wouldn't be like, okay, I'm using a big brush for this and I'm going to switch to a small brush, but I'm going to switch places in the painting. I'd keep going with that passage with that small brush, where you pick up a palette knife and you paint for 15 minutes with the palette knife. And it just really helped, like, force me, like, there's a different way to put on paint, and it, just sort of exercises. And
that's so awesome. I just got to say, I've never heard of that before. That's so awesome. Sorry to cut you off, please.
Well, I don't think, I just kind of came up with that out of desperation. I was trying to make my painting better. And so there's that. And then a real big blessing for me has been, I use Holbein paint. Of course, manufactured in Japan. I'm distributed all over the world. But their quick dry white, it sets up so quickly that I'm able to get layers of paint that look, when I look at them compared to work that I was doing before, it'd been like weeks to build up that much texture, and I'm doing it in a few days. And that also comes from looking. I love George Carlson, who is a sculptor, and you're familiar with his work. Just love his work. And so trying to get all those raw passages of paint, and I don't know if he uses anything but brushes, but there's just so much of a sculptural quality to his paints. And so, but he's, as far as I know, from like the word of mouth, like the word on the street is that he paints a couple paintings a year, and he's just, doing one layer at a time for months and months and months. And I paint more quickly than that. And so the quick dry white has really allowed me to, it's really complemented the way I want to paint. So yeah, that's a lot of the tool stuff. Basically, you get to a certain point in a painting, and it's as far as to go, like, technically. It's the right drawing, it's the right color, it's the right value. And then the rest is sort of like feeling your way in the dark. Like, I guess it's like that last 30%. And we're all capable of it. Like, I think that I don't want to spook any students, be like, well, it really is this sort of, inner thing that maybe you haven't and maybe you don't. Like, I think everybody's capable of it, but it's just one of those things where you just have to keep going and going and going until it feels right. And that's one of those things. I have at least in my painting style, that idea of, like, you overwork the painting, or you have to stop now because maybe you'll ruin it. That was very liberating to just reject that for me, because, it's like I'm the artist. I made this, I'm going to keep going until I think it's done. Right. And if I paint, like, if I should overcomplicate a passage, you just get a big brush and you paint it out. Right. Like it, I'm not maybe explaining it too well, but that idea of, like, this sort of mythical, like, you'll ruin a painting as it's blooming kind of idea. And so people are afraid to go too far with a painting. And I think what ends up happening is they don't go far enough, like, I'm just going to push through until I think it's really, really done, and
It totally
That's it.
makes sense. Yeah, it totally makes sense. And I've heard that so much as well, like with, oh, leave it there, don't go any further. And my personal philosophy is, yeah, go ahead and overwork it. You only know where the line is by crossing it. And a lot of my work consequently does look pretty overworked. I will be the first to admit that. Like Milford Sound, a lot of people saw that painting. They're like, hey, that's a really cool painting. But you get right up on that sucker and you can see each like individual little blade of grass. I went too far with it. But I'm looking at work, by George Carlson, as you were saying, and T. Allen Lawson, and you and artists like Paquette or Stephanie Page Thompson. I'm looking at you guys, and I'm like, I really need to loosen the heck up. So and I think this is the thing, by being exposed to other artists and hearing about their philosophy and their approach to even just the craft of painting or materials. It's like another little signpost on that road for us on our own personal creative journey, and it's so informative. And this is the thing I love about talking to other artists, in particular artists that are open, and want to have that conversation, is that it gives you this opportunity and permission to just go into new territory and shine and develop. And I feel that is really, that's my role as an artist, to help whoever I can, whenever I can, because I can. And I love that. But
Right.
this is what I love about connecting with others too, because as I said before, man, I'm learning more than anybody. I mean, I'd never heard of that before. For instance, like there was another nugget just there. I love that idea. I had thought of some videos here, the ideas for videos that were silly challenges, and I was trying to think of challenge videos that all related to time in one certain way. In one way or another, they related to time. And so the first one was like, how long can I paint for? Like, what's the longest single sitting on a painting I could
Oh, how
do?
long did you make it?
24-hour period.
Dude.
Yeah. Watch it. It's on YouTube and it's stupid.
Okay.
And so it was painting like through an entire sleep cycle, the whole thing. I stayed in the studio working on a painting for 24 hours straight. And I took, I was allowed brief breaks, like 5 minutes or whatever. I allowed myself to just go like, so my studio at the time was on the main street of a town called Lawrence in the South Island, New Zealand. And the right next door was the corner store, and I was like, okay, it's like 10:30 at night. The store's about to close. I'm gonna go get a cup of coffee and keep going. And I burned through the rest of the night. So I hope that still qualifies me. But it's my challenge, so I say it still counts. But what you just had there was an excellent, brilliant. Never heard of that before. I'm going to change painting implements every 15 minutes. Now, the thing that I love about that is that you are forcing the situation in your studio, forcing that learning experience by pushing yourself into uncomfortable territory. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that putting pressure, whether it's pressure of a deadline or external pressure or whatever, pressure has a potential to do one of two things. It will either make you or break you. And that's just such a beautiful example of running into some new territory, of going far out. I discovered something here. By setting up the circumstances as an experiment, just going, I love that, man. I love that. I think it's such a wonderful idea. So if I promise you this right now, between me and you, if I ever take that idea and do that on YouTube, I'm going to call it the TJ Cunningham Challenge.
Okay. All right.
But
Well, I appreciate that.
only with your
Yeah.
permission, brother. Only with your permission, because I just think
Oh no, go for it.
I
Yeah.
think it's a wonderful idea, and it's obviously the results have been extraordinary. But that quick drying white as well. Let me ask you, just on the technical front, do you know what the drying agent is in that, and what is the chemical compound of that white?
I think it's an alkyd.
An alkyd.
So
Perfect. Okay.
alkyd is the alkyd, and so that means there's solvent in it,
Mhm.
because I guess in order for, alkyd is like the consistency of tar, so they have to put quite a bit of solvent in it. So the drawback for a quick dry paint is that they stink like solvents. So that I may, you know I may have to get better ventilation at some point. But I did get, well, it's always a give and take, because I got rid of my mineral spirits.
Good.
Um So
Terrible.
I've got that evaporating, but then I picked up this quick dry white. So it's, it always finds a way back in. But anyway, it really is, it'll like in a 3-hour session, your first mixtures are starting to get really stiff, and I love that. And there's something too that I just heard from another artist, Sue Lyon, that Feshin would put his paints on a cardboard to soak all the oils out of them. And, of course, that make them stiffer and less glossy and all of that. And looking at his paintings and like all those raw, textures that he would get out of it, you can see how that's coming into play, all that dry brush, And so my paint starting to set up and dry on me as I'm painting. I just love it. I just love it. And I do paint in layers. Like I don't have the whole, if you'd painted this, like the whole purist thing, like I used to be, because when you're a student, you just are like, you think this is the way you do it. And if you're not doing it this way, it doesn't matter if it's good painting, you're doing it wrong. Right. Like a lot of, that's kind of, I get that vibe, and it's like, so alla prima from life, one sitting, that's how you paint. And like, nah, like now it's just like, who cares? I don't have any, like, you really can't cheat your way to a good painting. I mean,
oh, wow. Okay. Boom. Another nugget. Man, I hope people are writing these down. This is great. Yeah.
One-liners, man. Yeah. You can make it a 30-second podcast.
I made a new idea. Imagine how many podcasts I could get through. But look, it's interesting as well. Like being a purist about your approach. I just talking to Virgil Elliott on the podcast. I just recorded a conversation with him yesterday, and it was kind of like, he was saying, I can't remember exactly how he said it word for word, but it was like, why are you out there trying to paint like Sargent? Sargent already has you whipped. There's a way that he did it. That was his way of doing it, and people have this idea, oh no, you have to do it like this. You have to listen. At the end of the day, what are we doing? We're pushing colored mud around on a piece of cloth with a stick with a bunch of hair sticking to the end of it. Turn that brush around, use the other end of the brush. You can apply marks whatever way you can think of,
right.
As
long as you're using good enough, like, like if you do, you can do things that'll lead to cracked paintings or paint that doesn't stick. And, like you can, there are certain parameters for appliation.
Cause and effect.
And I do pay attention to like the fat over lean and all of that. I've gotten pretty careful about that. And I also do all of my paintings on rigid boards. I don't do any stretch canvases ever anymore. Right. So there are stretch canvases out there, but I stopped making those back probably 2015 or so. I just was done with those because they all expand and contract much more than a panel will. And it's interesting, if you go to a museum, those Renaissance paintings, they're painted on panels, look great, they're 500 years old and they look great. So anyway, I do all my work on panels, which gives me a little bit more confidence that all this crazy thick paint won't crack, in the next, I want them to last forever, obviously. So, but yeah, like the thing with another, like, just, like really pivotal moment for me was finally coming to, I am my favorite artist. And when I'm looking at Sargent, I won't say I'm better than Sargent, but I'm more interested in what I'm doing than what Sargent was doing. And anything that, any of these other artists are doing is something that I'm just going to take and try to apply to what I'm doing, and that sort of broke me free from that whole, like, I open alla prima and I'm trying to paint just like Schmidt, and I close alla prima and I get on the web and I see, Casey Baugh and I'm trying to paint just like Casey Baugh, like that sort of, like, I always think of Johnny Depp and the spinning compass, like, I don't know which way to go. I love all these artists and I don't know, like all of that is like, you're bringing in all of that to your style. And of course, like, museums are hugely important in that, to just go and see. I have like the first time seeing we went, my wife and I went to the Met, and then we went to the Clark, and then we went to the Boston Museum of Fine Art, like all in one little road trip. And just, it was neat to see Sargent's style evolve from his early work to his later work. Went to the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum as well, and he had like one of his last portraits is there. You can just see like his evolution. Like Sargent didn't paint like Sargent for too long, like he was on a path too.
Yeah.
If you get what I mean, like he had really polished, careful paintings, and then he had really broad, his more like sort of trademark, what people think of when they think of Sargent. But just to pick all that up, and anyway, not feel like you have to base your own style on someone else's style.
I love that as well. Like I must admit, I kind of did cringe a little bit when you said that. Not but I totally get what you mean. It's like, I am my favorite artist, and the bit in me that cringes is like, I okay, how about this? I want to believe that. I desperately want to be that, but I'm not. And but I just kind of go, well, I dare not even think that thought, because how egotistical of me. But that's not what you're saying at all. It's yeah.
No.
I so that's I'll put that to one side. But and not to put words in your mouth, but I mean, that's just the way I kind of initially reacted to it. But that is, again, just brilliant, TJ, because when we get too caught up in fixating on a particular way that one artist did things, and we just focus on that, you kind of lose the plot a little bit. I tell you where I find it, and I pick up the thread of that for myself artistically, is I go, okay, what is the standard? What is the objective standard of beauty? What is that thing that I'm trying to chase? Is there an objective standard of beauty? And I think by and large there is, because I think most people will look at a landscape or a creation, by the work of the master artist himself, the chief of all master artists. I mean, he created nature. And so I'm looking at this thing going, okay, that's pretty cool. All right, that's the standard right there. How close to that can I get on a two-dimensional thing to honor that and kind of communicate that which I'm seeing in front of me. And that's what I really what I try to focus on. And then out of that comes my style. And I, it's kind of like you have a recognizable style now. Like I can see there's a consistency, but there's something coming through because you're in it and you can't remove yourself from the process because you made that image. But to me, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, this is something that I've been thinking about a lot, because I get a bunch of people asking me, how do I find my style? I'm like, don't worry about it. What do you want to paint? Focus on that. Your style will come about naturally. Don't focus on the style. The style will come. Just paint and love it.
That's in the beginning of John F. Carlson's Guide to Landscape Painting. It's just, students shouldn't worry about style. It's like handwriting, just paint for 4 months every day from life and you'll have a style. Just like that. So yeah, and the idea with choosing to be my favorite artist is an idea as a teacher that I want to communicate to my students too, because it's not, we can just get totally overwhelmed by perceiving how much better someone else is at X or whatever. Like they're just really, really good. And you can see the tremendous distance between your ability to create work and their ability to create work. And it's easy to get discouraged by that. It's easy to feel like, well, then you just need to copy it. And then you feel like you're just copying them. And you can see the really well-known artists that have, sort of like these rings around them of all these people who are trying really hard to look like, that artist. Right. Yeah. And it's much more, I'm most interested in what I'm doing. Because I have agency. I'm most interested in what I'm doing. And And then just for my students too, like you paint for the next, I've been painting for 15 years. If you paint for the next 15 years, you're going to look totally different. Like the where you'll go, because we're all so unique. So I guess that's the thing, like just to not try to be a tribute to Sargent or a tribute to Soroya or whatever artist it is, because it's better just to be in love with what you're doing and not feel like you somehow owe, like you have to try to mimic these other artists. And even the 5 people that may try to be mimicking me, or maybe there are 3 of them, I don't know, like it's just, we're all on our own journey, you know what I mean? Anyway, I hope that clarifies that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's always interesting, hearing other artists' take on that whole thing. Especially, accomplished painters like yourself, that have found that. And also just, reflecting on it, because again, it just reminds me of those early years when I first started painting, just going, oh, who am I? What do I want to be? And it does take time. It's interesting as well. Like, I think this is the exciting thing for a lot of the young artists that are coming up now, is that they have the beauty or the ability of being able to be exposed to more art and artists. I think, okay, well, there is a downfall there to maybe not being able to go to as many galleries or museums as we used to, or maybe just the nature of just traveling in general. You're not exposed to as much art and culture as we once were, maybe, just a couple of short years ago. But online, you can come across all these people. So my hope is that people will continue to branch out, get exposed to more art online, and then they'll hear that one thing as well, is that, and really pay attention and take home these takeaways here, so they can start this journey right for themselves, learn from all the mistakes, learn from all the stuff that worked, and learn from all those mistakes, the things that didn't, and then maybe they can get a bit further along.
Like take time off their journey. Like that's the idea I love as a teacher, where you're just like, it took me 5 years to figure this out. If you listen carefully, it's going to take you 10 minutes to figure it out. You can skip those 5 years of searching, just get farther down the trail, And it's one of those things where art is so unique. It's so, like, I love right now, I think, like my favorite, like, I'm double crossing myself here, but like the artist that I look at and I'm just like, wow, I wish I could paint like this, is
don't worry, man. I'll teach you how. It's fine.
You got it, man.
I'm sorry. No, carry on.
It was perfect. Heinrich Zugel. Are you familiar with Zugel?
I'm gonna look him up right now. Okay, give me that name.
So Heinrich Zugel, and he's a little bit obscure. When you see it, you'll know why. Like, not why he's obscure, but why I love him. And so he's a German artist, died in Munich in 1943. So literally the entire world was fighting with his nation when he died in Munich, right? Of old age, I think. So he just, for some reason, he's just not as famous, as well known. Like, you just don't hear his name. But his work is just astounding to me, like absolutely astounding to me. So I look at it, but the thing is, like, I can paint sheep with my whole heart for the next however many years, and I can look at his paintings and be inspired by them, but I'm never going to paint like that. I'm never going to be able to paint like that. And if I'm honest with myself, there are things like, if this were my painting, I would change this, or I would change that, like, you just look at other work. So with students, I think when you're studying, when you're learning, like, how important it is to realize that you're just kind of taking pieces of all these things and putting them together. At least that's how it's worked for me. So
That's a new name, and I've just pulled up his work now. Heinrich Zugel, Zugel, Heinrich Zugel.
Hmm.
Uh, Amazing work. This is really reminds me. I've seen painters that have got a similar kind of signature brushwork and style, but Munnings comes to mind.
Munnings, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hans Hyson from Australia comes to mind. But just extraordinary. Lucy Kemp Welch is another one. But extraordinary paintings. This guy was not on my radar at all. Thank you for another name here. I'm gonna have to get a file going on this guy. But I
Yeah.
totally get what you mean as well. Like it's super inspiring stuff. But I find myself doing this all the time, TJ, which is, looking at an artist's work from the past and then going, yeah, I love it. It's a beautiful painting. Man, I'd love to live with a painting like that. Extraordinary. Maybe even do a master copy. Well, what is it about this work? And then going, but I don't like this bit. And then feeling a little bit bad about that, because I think what we tend to do is we tend to put these artists from the past on a pedestal,
Right.
and a bit they almost become like an idol in a way. We need to watch out for that, right?
Sure.
But by putting them on a pedestal and lifting them up to this almost this deity type status, and then putting our look at what we do with Da Vinci, right? But I don't look at Da Vinci's work and get inspired. I'm not inspired by the Mona Lisa. I'm not. I don't particularly like it. I mean, I understand it's a valuable painting.
There, he said
Everybody
it,
agrees.
everybody.
The Mona Lisa sucks, man. Come on, no, it's not a terrible painting. But I'm not going to say I could paint it better. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. It has nothing to do with ability. I don't have that in the portrait file of portraits that really inspire me. I don't. It just
Oh,
doesn't.
sure,
It
yeah.
doesn't give me the goosebumps that some of the other paintings out there do. But what is it about that? Just because do we forget that these were people? They're people. They're fallible. They're human beings. Probably most of them were really unpleasant. You wouldn't want to spend any time with them, but they're just people
Oh,
created.
fashion, yeah.
What's fetching?
Have you
Oh,
ever
don't tell me about
have
that
you
about
ever read
fetching.
his life story? Like,
No.
oh, he was a piece of work, man.
Oh,
Like, yeah,
oh
he was.
no,
Did you
not
not?
my,
You didn't know that? No, he
not
was
my
a.
fetching. No, come on.
Oh man, I'm so sorry. I said too much.
But
I'm
this is
sure.
what I'm talking about is you build up an image in your mind of what these people were like. And it's like, Rodin was a piece of crap. Like he produced some amazing work, but the guy was a brute, apparently. Yeah, I bet Vincent van Gogh was really not nice to be around, and he probably smelled a bit, honestly. And you had
Yeah,
to
yeah.
sit on the right side of him, otherwise he couldn't hear a dang thing you were saying. So I don't know. But what is it about that we're so afraid? To me, I feel like it stifles our development by putting these people on a pedestal, because it's like, oh, they could do no wrong. Like I love Jules Bastien Lepage, for instance. His
Mm,
his his painting, The Potato Gatherers, is sublime. It's absolutely beautiful. There is one painting that he did. I think it's called The Apparition, and it's a painting of two shepherds being, having this encounter with an angel, and the angel's wing, it goes right out the top left corner, like literally lined up out the top left corner. Now, there's a few compositional rules that I try to follow because, the edges of the canvas, for instance, are vectors. They're lines of force or sight. When you're looking at the bounds of a painting, you're aware you're looking at a painting. So those edges become a line of force, and they can either work for you or against you. But when you draw attention to an edge or a corner, suddenly you're no longer looking at the painting. Your eye goes right off the edge of the painting. And I'm looking at that going, dude, why'd you go and do a dang thing like that? But this is
sure.
Lepage. I'm looking at him go, or Lepage. I don't know. I'm terrible with French, but why would you go and do that? But here I am thinking, how dare you? How dare you say that about
Sure.
another artist? You
But
know,
that's what's really fun. Like, it would be fun to go to a museum together and just go through the whole thing and
just
say what we like and say what we don't.
just bag
Like,
them
I
out,
mean,
bro.
it's,
Just bag them
yeah,
out.
but it's good to be able to do that because we're individuals.
Yeah,
Like,
man. Yeah.
apparently he wanted to do it that way. anyway, yeah, I love doing that. I love, especially, if they're dead and, there's no hurt feelings. They're long gone. They're not worried about this anymore, just
Yeah.
just say it like it is. Um, there's
Could you imagine going to Da Vinci's opening? Hey, Da Vinci, you suck.
yeah, right.
You know,
I
run
think
away.
that's what Michelangelo did, or maybe Da Vinci did it to Michelangelo. Like they had quite a bit of
Yeah, yeah,
rivalry, those two.
yeah. We thought the French Impressionists were bad with each other, but some of those Renaissance guys, my goodness, yeah, pretty intense people, intense time.
Yeah.
Listen, man, I could geek out with you about art all day. This has been such a treat talking with you. I've learned so much. I got a new name there that I could put in the file. A few takeaway quotes and stuff. Before we tie a little bow around this, I just want to ask you, what's next for you? What are some of the things that you're really excited about? What are some of the things that you're exploring with your art? Some directions you want to go in your career? What's on the horizon for TJ Cunningham?
Wow. So I have, um, I'm really kind of in the middle of this vein of livestock that I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving it. So there are there are a few larger paintings that I'm excited about doing. Most of my paintings recently have been sort of mid-sized to small, so I'm excited about. I've got some compositions lying around the studio now that are going to get translated into some larger work, and then there's one that I've been there's a few that I'd love to do of it's a bird's eye view, but you're looking down on one of the great birds of prey, soaring birds, and down at the landscape past the bird. So it's a little bit, that the idea admittedly came from Wyeth's painting Soaring, Andrew Wyeth's painting Soaring, but Andrew Wyeth, yeah, look it up, Andrew Wyeth's painting Soaring. He, though, like Wyeth, Wyeth is funny because it's like no matter what he painted, you look at his paintings and it feels like Andrew Wyeth specifically. You
It
feel like
does.
somebody's just
It's, yeah.
just about to get murdered. It's always like someone has just been murdered or is just about to be. Like there's always creepy music playing. it's like cows in a farmyard, but like
What's with that, dude?
something's about to happen.
Yeah.
It's a funny thing with Andrew Wyeth. So anyway, I'm not at all like him, but I love that composition. I love that idea. So there are a few paintings like that hopefully someday I can, I've been wanting to paint these forever. So yeah, that's next, and I don't know. It's kind of an adventure, like something will be, the sheep thing started less than a year ago. So it's just something incredibly inspiring will happen. You'll see some sort of, vibration, glimmer of beauty that I hadn't noticed before. And, I'll be after that. So
Awesome, man. Awesome. Well, TJ, what a treat this has been. Thank you so much for being on this episode of The Creative Endeavor.
hey, well, thanks for having me, Andrew. Your work and your story and inspiration to me. So it's been a pleasure.
Well, this has been the Creative Endeavor podcast. Thank you so much for spending this time with me here. And a huge thank you and shout out to TJ Cunningham for joining me. What a treat this was. Right now, go and follow TJ on his website at cunninghamfineart.com and on Instagram at cunninghamfineart. Again, I'll put those up on the screen here. And thanks for being here. Thanks for watching the exclusive Patreon video version. If you're new here on Patreon, welcome. I really hope you're enjoying all of the extra content that's not going to be found anywhere else. And I hope you're enjoying those critique videos, the Q&A videos, as well as those reference packs. I've got some extra goodies coming your way very soon as well. I've actually narrated a couple of time lapses, and I'll be releasing those shortly. So even more content than you can shake a brush at. I like that. It's got a nice ring to it. Anyway, it's late. I really appreciate you being here. I got to say, listen, with everything going on, I enjoy these moments together. I know that sounds weird and sappy, but I like being up here. I like sharing creativity with people. I like reaching out to people, talking about art. I like having something to listen to. Granted, I have to review these podcasts when I'm painting in the studio, but I hope you like listening to these while you paint. Let me know. Hit me up in those comments down below. What do you do while you're listening to the creative endeavor? Are you driving? Are you painting? Hopefully you're painting. You better be painting, right? Anyway, it's all good fun. I'm going to get out of here. As I said, it's late. Awesome. All right. Can't wait to be with you again. I'll see you again next time in another episode of The Creative Endeavor. So long.